Disclaimer, this video will be covering the Dark Tournament, so there will of course be spoilers. If you do not want to be spoiled, please check out the series first. I do not think you will regret it. It is no secret on this channel that Yu Hakusho is my favorite shonen story of all time. It was the first anime I was ever exposed to thanks to my sister, and every time I look at it, the experience stays the same. It's never a sour time. But of course that brings up the question, aside from the one video I made about the series years ago, why haven't I talked about it since? Honestly, it was because I thought that talking about the series wouldn't be needed. There's already videos that go in depth with the characters, the battles, the themes, and how the writing holds up. In fact, the closest I ever get to video making is when I join forces with WHAWKINS on his channel as we recap the whole series arc by arc. He knows how much I love this story, and it's been an absolute honor to join him as we reminisce over this beloved show. So please go over to WHAWKINS' channel and subscribe. He does a lot more videos and he deserves all the love. Plus, if you don't, I'll call you a wet book. As of this video, we just finished up the Dark Tournament and are ready for my favorite villain from the series to finally make his grand entrance, which then got me thinking. For as many videos as there are for this series, I personally haven't seen any that goes into the sheer hype and terror that Team Tagoro had during the Dark Tournament saga. I mean, the individuals on the team are talked about, but the team itself, how scary they were, how effective they were as villains, is a subject I haven't seen discussed. So I want to do it. I want to go on a loving tangent on how I think Team Tagoro is one of the best villainous teams I've seen in shonen. I think the best way to sum this up is to go on memory lane and recap. So we make it to the Rescue Yukina Arc, the last small-scale arc this series gets. So who's Yukina? She's an ice demon that was kidnapped by resident scrotum lord Tarukane, who wants to torture Yukina to make her cry. Why? Because her tears produce the most valuable currency known to man. But of course, Yukina doesn't submit. So Tarukane hires the Toguro brothers. When they're introduced, they are known as the leaders of an apparition gang. If there's a job that needed to be done, they were the experts. They're so deadly, even Kurama, Prince of Spirit World, was certain that Yusuke would be slaughtered when the detective ran into the pair. But hey, through the power of teamwork and love, Yusuke and Kuabara seemingly take down the main Toguro brother. As he falls on his back with the spirit sword through the gut, everyone goes home and calls it a day. Except Tagoro's day wasn't over. Turns out the brothers were hired to rig the fight by a member of Tarukane's own elite club. And how are we introduced to this moment? By Tagoro literally popping out the spirit sword out of his gut with no damage left over. To repeat, he flexes a blade of spirit energy out of his body. But even though his contract is done, Tagoro says that he wants to fight Yusuke and Kuabara again on his own terms, to which Sakio, the man responsible for everything, agrees to, saying that Yusuke and Kuabara would be invited as guests to the Dark Tournament. And wouldn't you know it, the Tagoro brothers happen to be the reigning champions. So the bar, to say the least, is starting to get raised. But to an audience member, they can think, oh wait a second, Yusuke and Kuabara beat the brothers before, they can do it again. Only problem was that the Tagoro brothers were playing with them the whole fight. They went along with every plan Yusuke and Kuabara had, and our heroes were still almost massacred. Not only that, but Tagoro was fighting at a whopping 20% of his power. So now there's no telling what Tagoro's true power is like, or if Yusuke even has what it takes to win. And that right there is the recurring theme from this point forward. No matter how high Yusuke or any of our heroes climb, no matter what goal or feat they achieve, it always feels like Tagoro is this wall that can't be scaled. So Tagoro finds Yusuke and he starts a mic drop. He reveals he was only toying before and then says, oh by the way, here's 60% of my power. Tagoro then darts around, bringing an entire parking garage on top of Yusuke in a matter of moments. I know there's great dialogue that goes over Yusuke and Tagoro's relationship in this series, but I need to hold off on that. We're still on the history portion. Also, it may seem odd to shonen veterans nowadays that someone is parking garage level, but for this series, at the time, this threat level wasn't done before. We may have had bandit demons, copy demons, and lightning demons, but in terms of raw strength and intimidation, this is an enemy us fans haven't had yet. But the bike still hasn't hit the floor yet. Tagoro saves Yusuke from the destruction and says, this is the last time I save your life, alluding to the fight before and now. Then he says that there's a dark tournament, an event where demons compete to be the top dog. The winner gets a wish granted, and the losers get to die. Tagoro makes it clear that if Yusuke doesn't participate and or doesn't reach the final round, everyone the detective knows is going to be butchered by Tagoro's hands. It's the ultimate ultimatum. And then the mic hits the ground, making a crater, because Tagoro ends with this information to Hiei and Kurama, who were watching the entire time. Tagoro says that they too are invited, but teams at the Dark Tournament need up to 5 members. And there it is. The realization is set in stone. Not only do the brothers rule the tournament, but they have team members, ones that make it to the finals, members that are leagues above the Aberration Gang members Tagoro had before, because there's no chance that anyone on Team Tagoro would be considered weak. Who could these members be? Well, let's fast forward a few episodes. As Yusuke battles Chu at the end of the first round, a human crow or Nosferatu-like figure makes his way to Tagoro's spectator box. 2 fodder security guards try to stop him and catch a terrible case of explosions. Oh my. As he enters, Tagoro reveals to the audience that this is Karasu, one of the members of Team Tagoro. Double oh my. But before we even get time to recognize the fight potential of Karasu, Tagoro tells him to look into the arena and judge if Yusuke Urameshi is a worthy fighter. This isn't Tagoro talking like a ruler to a peasant or a gang leader to a punk. This is one team member recognizing the power of another and asking if the main character remotely stacks up to them. Karasu isn't just some subordinate. While we'll get into character motivations later, Karasu is still acknowledged by a man who at this point in the series has the aura of someone that's truly unstoppable. So that leaves the question. If Karasu can blow people up and Yusuke is reserved for the younger Tagoro brother, then who on Team Urameshi can counter explosions? Is it Kurama with his unique arsenal, Hiei with his speed, or Kuabara with his spirit sword? True, he might be reserved for the elder Tagoro brother because of their last fight, but nothing is confirmed yet. No matter what though, it seems that Team Urameshi is already at a huge disadvantage if they can even make it to the finals. Also, that disadvantage makes a comeback. When it came time for Team Tagoro's first battle, younger Tagoro enters the ring on his own. He says that his teammates didn't even consider this fight worth their time, so Tagoro is here to take on the challenge. It's a 5-on-1, but the odds are not in the enemy team's favor. Oh yeah, they have names. The Spirit Warriors! They have large bodies to help channel as much spirit energy as possible, but don't get attached to them. Because Tagoro goes 45% and annihilates them all with a single blow. He then looks over at Yusuke, sending the teen into another layer of fear. Yusuke may have taken out Chu, but once again we are asking ourselves how Yusuke can take out someone with this much power and isn't even close to taking fights seriously yet. It's a simple massacre, but it's very damn effective in terms of intimidation. Sadly, that's the last we see of Team Tagoro for a little bit, but by the Egyptian gods do they have a comeback! Cut to episode 43. As the teams prepare for the semi-finals, Team Urameshi catch the ending of a battle of who their next opponents would be, Team Uriatogi. But that spotlight is stolen in what might be one of my favorite moments of the series. Team Urameshi is making light of a situation when Yukina is brought up, when suddenly, an at the time disguised Genkai gives Yusuke a cold stare, silently telling him to look straight. As he looks over, the entire audience gets ever so quieter as they notice that up in the stands is the fully assembled Team Tagoro. Both of the brothers, Karasu, and oh my god, look at this Shogun looking monster! We don't get any information or dialogue on this final member of Team Tagoro, but it's safe to assume that he's in the same realm of strength as Karasu, if not greater. But what sells this moment is the stare down. The song Meikai starts playing, and it's just our 2 main teams deadlocked with each other. These are the final opponents. There might be semi-finals to get through, but this team of monsters is the end game. And then once again, we're left wondering, wait a second, that Shogun guy. If Yusuke and Kuabara get the Tagoro brothers, then either Kurama or Hiei get this new force. His name is Bui, by the way, and I think he has one of the best designs in the whole series. He has one of those designs that could scream arc villain all on his own. So now, another question pops up. Now that Team Urameshi saw their final opponents, what do they gauge of them? What are their reactions? Kuabara responds by breaking down. He knows that they have to fight, but it's here where Kuabara is actually in sheer terror at the prospect of fighting Team Tagoro. And the kicker? Yusuke says that, yeah, they have to fight because that's the reason everyone's here in the first place. But notice that no one else is saying, we could win, or give any reassurances to Kuabara that Tagoro can actually be defeated. Again, the semifinals don't matter to this team, because they know the real fight that's ahead. Side note, I love that little play in terms of a meta context. When it comes to tournaments, we viewers are pretty certain that 9 out of 10 times the main character is reaching the final round. But to have our main character show visible doubt about making it there, or even survive in the final round despite knowing its importance, is amazing to see. On that subject of amazing sights, we finally get to see Team Tagoro fight. Cut to episode 51. I want to preference that Team Urameshi's fight against their semi-final opponents lasted for 7 episodes. It was a 3-on-5 since Yusuke was busy taking his final spirit test with Genkai to prepare for Tagoro. Genkai may have returned and saved her team by taking on the last 2 matches in the semi-finals, but I want to make sure I point out this parallel, since in the second semi-final match, Team Tagoro also has a 3-on-5 situation, and it lasts for less than an episode. We have Karasu, Bui, and the Elder Tagoro. This entire match pretty much exists to show how outclassed and outgunned Team Urameshi is. Kurama's watching the fight, and it appears that the stage is being set for Kurama versus Karasu, meaning Hiei would go to Bui.
Well, we're boned!
Back to Karasu, he fights against a demon that has acid spirit energy. Now, a staple of Kurama is his strategic mind, meaning every fight he's in involves a form of dodging until the time is right to strike. With Karasu, not only does he follow the same formula, but he does it with such ease, shown with his appearance of casually sliding around and having the aura that nothing is worth his time. It's like Karasu is 20 moves ahead and just wants to finish his business. So then with a single jump and touch, the acid demon is literally disarmed. Before any questions about mercy come into play, Karasu destroys the helpless demon without a second thought. This begs the question to fans as to how Kurama could win this battle. All of his plant-based weapons would be useless. It wouldn't be until later that a former enemy could provide some fraction of a chance, but at this time, Kurama is already doomed from the get-go, and he knows it. Then there's Bui's fight. Every step this monster takes destroys the ground. As he stands silently firm against his opponent, said enemy takes out a large sword. He starts boasting, but you know, you could believe it. This is a semi-finalist after all. He has to have some degree of skill. But as a show of fuck you, Bui materializes a giant axe that pushes him further into the ground. The demon then thinks that, hey, that axe is too big. He can only do large predictable swings. So our demon charges, and with no hesitation, and at very impressive speed, Bui casually swings his axe and obliterates the demon's body! This is just for one swing! So if Bui is a blade expert and is destined to fight Hiei, then it's easy to assume at this point that Bui's stats exceed Hiei's in every degree. So the hype just keeps on building. As Bui walks out of the ring, one of the remaining demons questions why their opponents are following the Elder Tagoro brother. You know, with how skinny and weak looking he is. Elder Tagoro then says that he'll take on the 3 remaining fighters, and if he loses, Team Tagoro will forfeit the match. So our 3 demon ninjas here use a team attack, and before any of them have a chance to strike, Elder Tagoro raises his arms and it's revealed how deadly his shapeshifting is. With his brother, he plays defense. On his own, it's pure unstoppable offense. Just these thin stretches of skin are considered blades, and this is just Elder Tagoro being casual. No effort is used here, just like with his teammates. They're already out of our hero's league. So if Kuabara is supposed to fight Elder Tagoro, then fucking how? One sword is going up against a guy whose fingernails could become spears. The tone is set since Elder Tagoro finishes the round off with a mad cackle, and it was just as chilling to me as a kid as it is now. I also want to call to attention that we do get reasoning as to why Karasu and Bui are working with the Tagoro brothers. Apparently, they were once beaten by the pair in battle. When they are spared, Karasu says that the brothers better just kill them, otherwise he and Bui will grow to be stronger and take their revenge. Tagoro welcomes the challenge, but until that time comes, they are part of the Dark Tournament team. And as if that's not enough, it's revealed soon after that Tagoro used 80% of his power to put down Karasu and Bui. It was at 80% where Tagoro killed Genkai and is the main level of power he uses against Yusuke in the final fight. So Hiei and Kurama have to go up against opponents that made Tagoro use 80% of his true power. Opponents that made Tagoro go to this size and was capable of this. This is why I labeled this video the terror of Team Tagoro. From the introduction all the way up until the final match, every team member is dangerous. Every one of them a true challenge for the finish, and none can be underestimated. In fact, it's these four opponents that usually spend their fights in the final round winning. The ones with the upper hand. With the exception of Hiei, the fights are dominated by Team Tagoro. Before we get there though, we do have one last power-up reserved for Kurama and Kuabara. Susaka from the semifinals returns to give Kurama and Kuabara gifts that could help pull a win against Tagoro. The reason is simple. Susaka may not like Team Urameshi, but he despises Team Tagoro. So if his weapons in a way take Tagoro down, then that's a victory in Susaka's book. Kurama gets a potion that once taken allows him to return to his original demon form before his time possessing a human that limited his strength. Kuabara receives a sword hilt that acts as a super power-up to his regular sword. Think of it like you're playing a Dragon Ball game and you upgrade your Kamehameha to a Super Kamehameha, only in blade format. Meanwhile, Hiei is prepared for his fight as he appears to be ready to unleash the Dragon of the Darkness flame once again. Only this time, Hiei refuses to fall down after using it, and Yusuke focuses his newfound energy that he absorbed from Genkai. Oh, before I forget, there's one last thing to talk about in this pre-game section, and I love that the story points this out. During the tournament, Hiei gives off the air that he is the strongest member of the team, shown through his victories and attitude towards his opponents and teammates. However, after Genkai's death, Hiei goes to a crater that 80% Tagoro casually made. Hiei punches the ground as best he can, and it's revealed that he's not close to that level of sheer power. Tagoro has Hiei beat, and it's one of the rare times where Hiei doubts his chances about winning. It only adds to the terror of Team Tagoro, since we can't even say, oh, if Yusuke falls, we have Hiei! Right? Yeah. Everything still points towards Tagoro winning. So let's finally talk about the fight. I'm not doing a play-by-play. Just want to sum them up and go over the fear/villain factor, since I do want to make my own separate video on the fight and go more in depth at a later time. That, and I don't want to stray off topic, so let's take a quick dive in. First off, Kurama versus Karasu. Like I mentioned before, Karasu is the dominator this fight. There isn't really a back and forth dynamic. Instead, Kurama is just trying to stay alive before he can transform and even the odds. It's here where Karasu reveals a secret that obliterates the scales. See, whenever we saw Karasu use his powers, he made physical contact to make demons explode. The OG Killer Queen, you might say. But then, it turns out that's just Karasu's style, to play with his food. Cause surprise, Karasu doesn't need to touch people. He creates bombs with his own energy and imagination. He is Kurama 5.0 because where Kurama is limited by the seeds he possesses and his own finite human energy to make said weapons, Karasu only needs his mind, able to create physical explosives from the air itself. And during all of this, Karasu is talking to Kurama like a scorned lover. Kurama is someone that Karasu likes, but as he says in a previous episode, anything that Karasu likes means that he likes to take apart piece by bloody piece. He goes full horror villain from their first encounter in episode 51 and actually affects Kurama mentally. In fact, Karasu is the only villain Kurama faces in battle that gets him scared and unstable. Now you might be thinking, well, just wait till Kurama turns into Yoko Kurama. But then Togashi swoops in with his Raiden. Instead of this being an easy win for Kurama, Karasu's arsenal alone is still above Kurama's level. Even when it appears that Kurama outmaneuvered his enemy and is ready to devour him with a plant, Karasu sucks in the air itself in order to turn his very being into an explosive and continue the torture. From the first fight in this final round, it's clear that just because one of our heroes are at their peak doesn't mean it's a sealed deal. Kurama has to use his own life energy for one last desperate strike, and while it does Karasu win, it also costs Kurama the match, meaning that no one on Team Urameshi can afford to lose a match from here on out. It's all or nothing, and it's only been one fight in. Next up, Hiei versus Bui. So at the start, Bui is throwing axes and tiles around, but Hiei is able to dodge and counter with his own mortal flame techniques. So since Bui's axes don't get the job done, what is his response? By revealing that his armor is a device meant to keep his monstrous power in check. So Bui is the OG Kenpachi Zaraki, and it shows. Outmatched, Hiei uses the Dragon of the Darkness Flame, a move that everyone beforehand was utterly terrified of. But Bui not only takes on the dragon, he overpowers the creature and throws it back at Hiei. Only a few scenarios come to mind where the villain takes the hero's strongest weapon at the time and throws it back. It's moments like this that really sell the hype and despair of these final battles. Now that would have been it for Bui, an easy victory, but thankfully Hiei managed to absorb the dragon into his being in order to surpass his opponent and take the win. It may have been the easiest win for Team Urameshi, but it came at the price of absorbing one of the strongest forces in Spirit World to knock someone out. So, take that as you will. Now, if you want the opposite of an easy win, let's go to the next battle, Kuabara versus Elder Tagoro. Much like Karasu, Tagoro goes to this fight with little difficulty. Kuabara only gets one solid hit, and it's at the very end of the battle. From start to finish, Tagoro tortures Kuabara both physically and mentally. Using his shapeshifting powers, he creates a puppet show of how Genkai was murdered. Using his powers, Tagoro casually makes Swiss cheese out of Kuwabara's body. And using his powers, Tagoro can transform his body any way he wants, allowing little to no harm to come to him. I think the big oh shit moment for me was at the start when Kuabara cut down a decoy of Tagoro, and after the transformation, that decoy turned out to be a small piece of skin. This slash right here on screen was a paper cut to this demon. And it only gets worse from here, since even Kuwabara's team members think that he has no chance to win in a straight-up fight. And it's true, no matter what Kuwabara does, no matter what new fancy tricky pulls that would have worked on anyone else, it is all nothing in the face of Tagoro. It took Suzaka's magic hilt to transform Kuwabara's energy into a fly swatter so that all of Tagoro could be attacked at once. But of course that doesn't finish him off either! See, even though Tagoro lost the match because everyone thought he was vaporized, he emerges from the ground, ready for vengeance when Yusuke and the younger Tagoro brother take the stage. There's even one more line from him to sow doubt in the audience.
You and your pal should know by now that you can't defeat my brother and me unless we want you to. Fortunately, my brother wanted to beat Genkai. Of course, you know how that turned out.
After everything we saw from Rescue Yukina through this tournament, that statement rings true. But to make one more example of how brutally powerful the younger Tagoro is, he, with no effort, casually punches his older brother into pieces and flings him to the sea. Elder Tagoro may have pushed a few of his brother's buttons with his insults to Genkai, but younger Tagoro is also making clear that no one is getting in the way of this final battle. So now, after 35 episodes of build-up, 35 episodes of Yusuke fighting and training his way to the top, it's time for that sweet, glorious rematch against the younger Tagoro brother. I am going to be very brief on this one. Again, don't want this turning into an hour-long special. Yusuke versus Tagoro deserves to be its own video, and that will happen, I promise you. The only thing I want to sum up is how in this finale, Tagoro up until the end remained that wall that couldn't be scaled. See, even with Genkai's power, Yusuke couldn't get a leg up on 80% Tagoro. He was able to defend himself, but never gain any ground. So Yusuke decides to remove his spirit cuffs to gain the advantage, which he does, but Tagoro responds by going to 85% of his power. This increase obliterates Yusuke, and we're suddenly in a time loop seeing a Tagoro brother torture a main character. Genkai then swoops in by possessing Pooh, saying that despite Yusuke's enhanced power, he's not tapping into all of it because his emotions, the things that are the source of his power, are weighed down by fear, doubt, and the guilt Yusuke has over losing his teacher. So Tagoro forces Yusuke's hands by making him watch helplessly as Kuabara is stabbed and falls, which finally breaks Yusuke's limit, and the two finalists have one last standoff. Though like in Kurama vs Karasu, Yusuke going all out doesn't automatically seal the deal. It takes every ounce of power Yusuke has to break Tagoro's body and make sure it can't regenerate. It was an all or nothing gamble too, since Yusuke fell to the ground right after his final spirit gun. So until the last possible moment, Team Tagoro absolutely dominated this tournament in terms of hype, challenge, and fear. I cannot wait to talk about their fights more another day. From the second they are shown on screen, Team Tagoro comprised of characters that tested our heroes like no other. Transformations, power-ups, and even strategies weren't enough. It took everything our heroes had and more. Also, that fact was sold early on with the mere glimpses we had of these monsters in action. Team Tagoro were parallels to our heroes in the most intimidating way. While the younger Tagoro brother would be the star and most noteworthy thing about the arc, I hope that I was able to at least make a case as to why the rest of his team deserve almost as much of that same spotlight. I say almost because only one of them was the main villain, but my point stands, damn it! There's a reason why Team Tagoro and their battles are remembered fondly by fans, and why they're so often used to reflect on some of the best this series had to offer. So with that is everything I can think of to talk about. When I come back to this series, I'm going more in depth with the fights, especially Yusuke versus Tagoro. When that happens, it will happen. But let me know what you thought of Team Tagoro as a whole in the meantime. Did they leave an impact on you like they did me? Either way, let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see all of you legends next time. Take care.